Broken trust, new beginnings, a father's fight for justice. Marriage is supposed to be built on trust, but trust is a quiet thing. It doesn't announce itself, doesn't demand recognition. It simply exists until the moment it doesn't. I used to believe April and I had something unbreakable, a love that had weathered time, change, and hardship. I was wrong. It's strange how, in hindsight, you can pinpoint the exact moments when everything began to unravel. Not all at once. No, betrayal is more subtle than that. It starts as a whisper, a quiet shift in the wind, a look that lingers too long or doesn't linger long enough. You don't notice it at first. You convince yourself it's nothing. But then the signs pile up, each one a little harder to ignore. Looking back, I can see them now, clear as day. The late nights. The way she pulled away when I reached for her in bed. The smile she once reserved for me, now flashing too easily at her phone. The unexplained absences, always brushed off with a casual, "Oh, just a girl's night." And the worst part? I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Because the alternative, the thought that my wife, the mother of my children, the woman I built my life around, might be lying to me, that was unthinkable. April was beautiful in a way that never needed effort. She had that effortless charm, the kind that made people want to be around her to earn her attention. When we first met, it had been intoxicating. She had this easy laugh, this mischievous glint in her, like she knew something the rest of the world didn't. I fell for her fast, hard, and for a while it was perfect. We built a life together, a home. We had 2 boys, Nathan and Jacob. They became my world, the axis my life revolved around. I worked harder, put in the hours, made sure they never wanted for anything. I thought I was being a good husband, a good father, but I was blind. The distance between us crept in like a slow-moving tide, barely noticeable at first, but relentless. By the time I truly saw it, I was already drowning. I remember the night I first allowed doubt to settle in my chest like a living thing. It was late, close to midnight, and April still wasn't home. She had said she was going out for dinner with Robin, our neighbor, but dinner didn't take 6 hours. I sat in the dim light of our living room, the TV on, but ignored my phone in my hand. I had already texted her twice. No response. I could have called. I should have called. But something inside me hesitated. Some quiet, gnawing voice whispered, "What if she doesn't answer? What if she does? What if you don't like what you hear in her voice?" When she finally walked through the door, she didn't look guilty. She looked radiant. Her hair was slightly tousled, her cheeks flushed, her lips parted like she had been laughing just moments before. She froze when she saw me, then forced a smile. "You're still up?" she asked, dropping her purse onto the counter. "Yeah," I said, studying her. She ran a hand through her hair, shaking it out, exhaling like she had just had the best night of her life. Then, as if realizing something, she turned to me with a look of practiced concern. "Is everything okay?" I wanted to ask her. I wanted to demand the truth, to tell her that something felt wrong, that I could feel the weight of a secret pressing between us. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." She hesitated for half a second, then shrugged, walking past me toward the bedroom. "I'm exhausted," she murmured, stretching. "We had such a great time. Robin was hilarious tonight." I watched her disappear down the hall, my stomach twisting. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But trust is a quiet thing. And mine had just stopped whispering. Pain throbbed behind my eyes, a relentless drumbeat pounding against my skull. My head felt like it was stuffed with cotton, my limbs heavy as lead. I barely remembered getting home, only that Penny, our office secretary, had driven me after I nearly passed out at my desk. I'd stumbled through the front door, collapsed onto the couch, and surrendered to sleep before my body hit the cushions. I must have slept for hours. But it wasn't the pain that woke me. It was the voices. Familiar. Low. Dripping with something that made the fine hairs on my arms stand on end. I stayed still, blinking sluggishly at the ceiling, disoriented. The light filtering through the blinds had shifted. It was later now, maybe evening. My mind, still sluggish from sleep, struggled to piece together why the voices downstairs felt off. Then I recognized one of them. April, my wife. Her tone was light, teasing. There was laughter woven into it, the kind she used to have when we first started dating. But there was something else there too. A softness, a warmth. The kind of warmth she hadn't used with me in years. And then, come on, April, how was it? Was it as good as before? The second voice sent a chill down my spine. Robin, our next-door neighbor. I felt a slow, crawling sense of unease settle in my gut, spreading like ice through my veins. The way she asked the question, like a friend eager for juicy details, I didn't want to understand what she meant. I refused to understand. But April's answer shattered my denial in an instant. Better. A rustle. Maybe Robin shifting in her seat, leaning closer. This time, it was incredible. Mind-blowing. The best sex I've ever had. The world tilted. The room felt too small. The air too thick. I tried to breathe, but each inhale felt like sucking in glass. Robin giggled. Better than with Chris? I held my breath. A small, pathetic part of me needed April to say no. To laugh it off. To say that no one could ever compare to her husband. But her voice came smooth and effortless, and it cut through me like a knife. Hell yes, I love Chris to death, but he's never made me feel like that. Never. And I'd never let him do the things Carl does. He'd think I was some kind of strumpet if I did. Carl. A name I had never even considered. A man I had never suspected. And love? She loved me? Was that supposed to make this easier? As if her affection excused her betrayal? Robin's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. So, does Carl think you're a strumpet? April laughed. Soft. Almost dreamy. Of course. But I'm his strumpet, and I like it. God, I can't wait for next time. Something inside me twisted, sharp, ugly. My stomach churned, my migraine forgotten, replaced by a different kind of pain. Not the dull ache of exhaustion. Not the searing heat of rage. But something colder, something deeper. Robin's voice sobered slightly. Aren't you scared Chris will find out? What would he do? A pause. A hesitation so slight I almost missed it. Then, April's answer. He won't. And even if he did, so what? He'd never leave me. He's too nice, too devoted. He'd forgive me. He loves the kids too much to risk losing them. With the right lawyer, I'd destroy him. I felt my hands curl into fists, my nails digging into my palms, so hard it hurt. She had already planned for my discovery. Already decided my response. Already dismissed me as weak. I closed my eyes, swallowing down the bitter taste in my mouth. She thought I would stay. She thought I would beg. She thought she knew me. She was wrong. So very, very wrong. Silence hung thick in the air, pressing against my ears, my chest, my skull. April and Robin stood frozen in the kitchen, their faces pale under the dim light of the pendant lamp. The wine glasses on the counter, still half full, reflected a distorted version of the moment. A moment that would split my life into before and after. Robin looked like a deer caught in headlights, shifting nervously from foot to foot, fingers twitching at the hem of her blouse. But April's expression was different. Her lips parted, then closed, as if weighing her words. No guilt, no remorse, just calculation. I felt a strange, detached calm settle over me, like I wasn't standing in my own kitchen, listening to my wife confess to another woman that another man had been inside her, that she had planned for this moment, had already mapped out how I would react, how she would win. I exhaled slowly through my nose, steadying the tremor in my hands. Where are the boys? My voice was steady, controlled. April blinked. If my response surprised her, she hid it well. With Pete and Robin's daughter, she answered smoothly. What does that have to do with anything? I ignored her question and turned to Robin instead. Did they hear any of that? Any of what you just said? She swallowed hard. And no, they're my place. They didn't hear anything. For a moment, I studied her. This woman who had sat at our dinner table, shared drinks with us on the patio, laughed with my wife about things I would never understand. And yet, she had known. Robin had known. And she had done nothing. Her mouth opened, but whatever she was about to say died in her throat. With a muttered, "I should go," she grabbed her purse and practically ran out the door, leaving me alone with April. My wife. My betrayer. She let out a slow, deliberate sigh and folded her arms, watching me like she was studying a chessboard. "How much did you hear?" My fingers curled into fists at my sides. "Enough." She tilted her head, her mouth pressing into a thin line. "Chris." "Who is he?" I cut her off, my voice dangerously low. "Who the hell is Carl?" A flicker of something, annoyance, crossed her face before she schooled her features into something more neutral. "It doesn't matter." I took a step closer. "The hell it doesn't." Her jaw tightened. "Look, I'm not doing this with you. Not when you're like this." "Like what?" My voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent beneath it, a storm brewing in my gut. "Like this," she gestured vaguely toward me. "Like you're about to lose it. And for what, Chris? A mistake. A mistake." I let out a breath of hollow laughter, shaking my head. "A mistake is forgetting to turn off the coffee pot. A mistake is backing into a shopping cart in the parking lot." My eyes locked onto hers, unblinking. "You don't trip and fall onto another man's dick by accident, April." Her expression darkened. "Don't talk to me like that." "Why not?" Afraid of being disrespected, I took another step toward her. She didn't back away, but I could see it in the slight tensing of her shoulders. She wasn't as confident as she wanted to be. "You sat here in my house, drinking my wine, talking to our neighbor about how much better another man makes you feel. You laughed at me, said you'd never let me do to you what he does because I'd think you were a— what was the word? A strumpet?" She flinched, just barely. "Did you ever stop to think about what that says about me?" My voice was quieter now, lower. "That maybe I never saw you that way because I loved you? Because I respected you? Because I believed you were someone worth protecting?" April exhaled sharply, frustration flickering across her features. "Chris, No." I held up a hand. "Don't give me some half-assed excuse. Don't insult my intelligence. Just tell me the truth. How long?" A beat of silence. "Then, does it matter?" I stared at her, something inside me breaking apart, shattering like glass on concrete. "Jesus Christ." I let out a humorless chuckle, running a hand over my face. April shifted her weight, crossing her arms tighter. "Chris, I never meant for you to find out like this." I let my hand drop. "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't mean for me to find out at all." Her lips pressed together. I took a slow, measured breath and turned away. "I'm putting the boys to bed." My voice was eerily calm, even to my own ears. "Chris, we need to talk about this." "No." I turned back to face her, my expression unreadable. "You need to talk. I need to think." And with that, I walked out, leaving her standing in the kitchen, the weight of what she had done settling into the silence. But in my mind, the decision was already made. This marriage was over. She just didn't know it yet. The house was silent. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind churning like a storm-tossed sea. April was asleep beside me, her breathing slow, even, peaceful. I envied her. She slept like a woman with nothing to lose, like someone who had already written the ending to our story and assumed she would be the one holding the pen. But she was wrong. I turned onto my side, watching her in the dim glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. This woman, this stranger in my bed, was not the woman I had loved. She was not the woman I had built a life with, sacrificed for, fought for. She was a liar, a betrayer, a woman who thought she could shatter my trust, desecrate our marriage, and still keep me tethered to her. She had already decided how I would react. He'd never leave me. The words echoed in my head like a curse. She believed I was weak, that I would swallow my pride, shove down my pain, and stay. She thought she knew me. I slid out of bed, carefully, moving slow, deliberate. My pulse thudded in my ears as I made my way to the closet, easing the door open without a sound. I reached for a duffel bag. Then I started packing. Clothes for me. Jeans, t-shirts, enough to last a few weeks. Socks, underwear, the jacket I always kept in the hall closet. Clothes for the boys. I picked the ones they liked best. Liam's Spider-Man pajamas, Ethan's favorite hoodie, the one with the little dinosaur spikes down the back. Shoes. Toothbrushes. They're stuffed animals. Every move I made was calculated, measured. I worked like a surgeon, precise and efficient. Next, the documents. I dug through the drawer in my office, my fingers closing around the manila folder where I kept the birth certificates, passports, social security cards. April had always teased me about being meticulous, about having everything too organized. Tonight, it worked in my favor. Then the laptop, my external hard drive, my phone charger. I grabbed the cash I kept hidden in the lockbox under the bed, a habit from my father, who had always told me, a man should have an escape fund, even if he never plans to run. For the first time, I was grateful I had listened. I moved like a shadow, every step careful, every breath controlled. April didn't stir. When I had everything packed, I stood in the doorway and looked at her one last time. I had spent years loving this woman. I had held her through sickness, through struggles, through the birth of our children. I had worked late nights, taken extra shifts, done everything I could to build a life she would never have to worry in. And in the end, she had given herself to another man and laughed about it. My hands curled into fists, but I didn't let the anger consume me. Not yet. I turned away, stepping into the hallway. Now, there was only one thing left to do. I took my tools from the garage. The deadbolt on the front door was the easiest, just a quick swap of the cylinder. The back door required more work, but nothing I hadn't done before. By the time I was finished, April was locked inside. I was locked out, and she wouldn't realize it until morning. I checked my watch. 4:27 a.m. The sun would rise soon. I went to my son's room, my heart tightening at the sight of them. Liam was sprawled across the mattress, his blankets kicked off, one arm draped over Ethan, who was curled into a ball, his face half buried in his pillow. They were safe, innocent, unaware of the storm that had shattered their home. I knelt beside them, brushing a stray curl from Ethan's forehead. "We're leaving, buddy," I whispered. He stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. "Where?" he mumbled sleepily. "Somewhere better." He yawned, trusting me completely, and nodded. 15 minutes later, I was pulling out of the driveway. I didn't look back. The night was thick with silence, the kind that wraps around you like a suffocating blanket. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the stillness of a moment stretched too thin, trembling on the edge of something irreversible. I sat in the dim glow of the kitchen light, a cup of untouched coffee cooling between my hands. The house felt different now. It had once been my sanctuary, the walls infused with years of laughter, whispered bedtime stories, and the quiet hum of a life I thought was unshakable. But tonight, it was a tomb, cold, empty, filled only with ghosts of what I used to believe. The suitcase sat by the door. 2 smaller bags, one for each of my sons, rested beside it. Everything I needed was in those bags. Everything important, anyway. Clothes, documents, enough cash to keep us steady until I figured out the next step. I had been careful, precise. No wasted movement. No second-guessing. April was still asleep upstairs, oblivious. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to storm into our bedroom, shake her awake, demand answers, scream until my throat was raw. But what good would it do? What words could possibly bridge the chasm she had carved between us? She had made her choice. Now I was making mine. I rose from the chair, moving on instinct. My mind felt detached from my body, like I was watching myself from a distance. Just another man slipping away into the night. I crept down the hallway, pushing open the door to my son's bedroom. They were curled up in their beds, small and peaceful, lost in dreams untouched by betrayal. My heart clenched at the sight of them. They didn't know. Not yet. I crouched beside their beds, brushing the hair from my eldest's forehead. He stirred slightly, mumbling something incoherent before settling again. This wasn't fair to them. None of it was. But staying would be worse. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. Then, with the gentleness of a thief, I scooped up my youngest first, wrapping him in his blanket before carrying him out to the car. The night air was cool against my skin as I buckled him into his seat, his little body sagging against the belt in deep sleep. One trip down, one more to go. I repeated the process with my eldest, moving quietly, efficiently. My heart hammered as I carried him through the house, every creak of the floorboards amplifying in my ears like the tolling of a bell. I half expected April to stir, to wake, to catch me in the act. But she didn't. She slept soundly in the bed we had once shared, unaware that by morning, her world would be different. By morning, I would be gone. I slipped into the driver's seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. The car was already packed, gas tank full, routes planned. I had done my research, cities with good schools, places far enough from here that we could start fresh. I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, breaking the silence like a crack of thunder. I stole one last glance at the house in the rearview mirror, the house where I had built a life, where I had loved a woman who never truly loved me back. Then I put my foot on the gas, and I never looked back. The first message came before I even reached the state border. April, Chris, where are you? I didn't answer. The phone buzzed again. April, the locks? What the hell is going on? I imagined her standing on the porch in her thin robe, rattling the locked door in frustration. Maybe she had tried using her key at first, thinking she was just groggy from sleep. But when it didn't work, when she realized what I had done, I could picture her panic setting in. She had never expected this. Another message. April, where are the boys? That one stung, but not in the way she probably intended. The boys. My boys. She hadn't given them a second thought while she was sneaking around, but now that the power was slipping from her grasp, she suddenly remembered she was their mother. Another buzz. April, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. Overreacting. I nearly laughed. She thought I would play my part, didn't she? That I would do what every good husband did when faced with betrayal. Yell a little, sleep on the couch for a while, maybe even cry in the shower. But in the end, I would stay. Because that's what I had always done. Forgiven, excused, adapted. Not this time. I set the phone on the passenger seat and focused on the road. The sky was beginning to lighten, a deep purple giving way to the first streaks of orange. In the back seat, the boys were still asleep, their faces soft in the glow of the streetlights. They had no idea how much their world had changed overnight. I had done this for them, but I had also done it for me. The phone rang. April. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another message. April. Chris, answer me. We need to talk. Please. I could picture her now, pacing the living room, running a hand through her hair, her mind racing through damage control. She wasn't sorry. She was afraid. Not of losing me, but of losing control. Because, in her mind, she had already won. She had the perfect setup, a husband who worked himself to exhaustion, who took care of the kids, who came home every night without question. And in the shadows, she had Carl, the one who made her feel alive. She had built a world where she got everything she wanted. And I had just burned it to the ground. Another call. This time I answered. Where are you? She demanded before I could even speak. I kept my voice calm. On the road. Chris, this is insane. You can't just take the boys. They're my children, April, and I'm their father. She let out a breath, trying to regain her composure. I get that you're upset. Upset. I let out a humorless laugh. That's an understatement. A pause. Then a shift in her tone. Less frantic, more measured. Come home. Let's talk. No. Silence. Then, her voice sharpened. This is kidnapping. There it was. The mask slipping. The real April. The one who had mapped out every scenario in her head. Realizing this was one she hadn't prepared for. This is me leaving, I corrected. And trust me, I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'd have to prove I'm a danger to them for this to count as kidnapping. And we both know I'm not. Her breath hitched. She knew I had her. For the first time in years, I had the upper hand. Her voice dropped, low and venomous. You're making a mistake. No, April. I exhaled, gripping the wheel tighter. The mistake was trusting you. And with that, I hung up. The road stretched ahead of me, empty and full of possibilities. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing for certain. I was never going back. The gavel struck wood. Custody of both children is awarded to Christopher Calloway. April gasped, her nails digging into the oak table before her. I could feel her eyes burning into me, but I didn't turn to look. I kept my gaze locked on the judge, on the words that seal my fate, the fate I had fought so damn hard for. For months, she had tried to paint me as the villain. She spun lies in court, claiming I was unstable, manipulative, even abusive. But the evidence told another story. A story of a mother who had abandoned her children in pursuit of pleasure. A story of a woman so convinced of her control over a man that she never once thought he would fight back. She never thought I had it in me. But I did. When the hearing ended, I stood, my lawyer shaking my hand with a firm nod. April didn't move. She sat there, stunned, blinking rapidly as if trying to wake herself from a nightmare. And then, under her breath, she whispered something. You were supposed to forgive me. I did turn then, just enough to meet her eyes. That's the problem, I said quietly. You thought you could break me and I'd still love you. She flinched. I walked away. The boys and I moved states after that. Not out of fear, not out of spite, just out of necessity. I didn't want to raise them in the shadow of betrayal, in a town where every street corner whispered of memories I wanted to erase. So we started over. A quiet little town nestled by the coast, where the air smelled of salt and the mornings were painted in gold. I found a job at a small firm, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me time to be present. Truly present. Something I hadn't been in years. The boys adjusted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient like that. At first, they asked about their mother. I answered them honestly, but carefully. I never spoke ill of her. I wanted to be better than that. But I didn't lie for her either. Mom made choices that hurt our family. I told them one night, tucking them into their shared bed in our new home. I made a choice too, to protect us, to start fresh. Do you still love her? My eldest, Ryan asked. I hesitated, staring at the ceiling for a moment. Then I exhaled. I love what I thought she was. But people change, and sometimes we have to let them go. He nodded, not fully understanding, but accepting. That was enough. It took a long time before I felt normal again. The scars April left weren't the kind you could see. They ran deep like roots twisting through my chest, squeezing tight whenever I thought about trust, about love, about letting someone in again. But healing comes in strange ways. Like the first time I laughed without forcing it. Like the day I realized I wasn't checking my phone, half expecting another manipulative message from April. Like the warm, simple joy of sitting on our back porch, watching the boys chase fireflies, their giggles echoing into the dusk. One night, as I stood in the doorway of their room, watching them sleep, I felt something unexpected. Peace. For so long, I had been drowning in anger, in resentment, in the need to prove something. But here, in this quiet, in this life, I built from the ashes of betrayal. I had nothing left to prove. I had won. Not just in court, not just in custody, but in reclaiming myself. I had been broken, but I wasn't broken anymore. I was free.